Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GoGodotJam. In the interview series, we have a lot of guests, but in this interview, we have someone special. We have someone that probably or most likely you cannot miss if you are starting out with Godot or even changing engines and want to learn Godot. It's Nathan from GDQuest, and one of his latest works is his Kickstarter campaign, which we're gonna celebrate in this video, and of course dive into a little of the backstage of it. Also, if you have questions for Nathan, we'll pick them up from the chat as well as the survey. It's also in the description. And one other thing that I want to mention, Nathan supported the GoGodotJam, so I want to thank him this way. And you can support as well by going to the fundraiser. It's also linked in the description down below. And by the way, if you like this t-shirt, it's also linked in the description down below. There's also the other color option, but people seem to like this one much more. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive right in and start the conversation. So now we are live. Nathan, welcome to GoGodotJam 2, actually. We had the first interview with the first one.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Nice. First, of course, I want to thank you for the support for the event, and not only for the fun support, but also for sharing this and making more awareness regarding this event. I think I've been actually thinking lately if a similar event can be done for a different engine, for example, for Unity or Unreal Engine. And I cannot figure out a way to do it because Godot has something special, and that is its community. And basically, you are like one of the pillars of Godot community. And yeah, of course, I hope that GoGodot it will become one as well. So, what do you think about Godot's community in general?
What can I say? I mean, there's definitely something special with the open source and pretty open nature of development that uh, I think you will find fans, you will find very dedicated users for other engines, but there's a bit more. Um, there's a greater number of people who want to share things for free, who believe in the free software movement or open source movement. And as a result, despite being very small in comparison with Unity, the YouTube channels are small and all, there are really lots and lots of people making tutorials, educational content, tools, and even experienced engineers. For example, I was seeing the Bullet Hell plugin, like high performance Genie native plugin that came out from what's his name? I forgot. Excuse me, but um, there's this thing, despite being much smaller than Unity, there's a lot of that happening. And people can have the idea that there are not so many resources, but often it's because many channels are very, very small. But I know at least 100 Godot tutorial channels personally. Like because people send them to me, or I've seen 100 of them. So there are really lots of those out there. Lots of people wanting to share what they know and all.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, I was really surprised about like 100 Godot channels. I mean, but they should be available like when people search, because you go on YouTube and you search Godot tutorials. Cannot they like are not?
It's difficult. First, many videos when you search, like the people will look at the first results, and the first results are from Heartbeast, maybe Kids Can Code, Mrs. GDQuest, Play with Fursifer. These days, they are making videos that are quite popular. So, no, the way YouTube works, especially if you make something that's a bit niche, like you have lots of channels, and I know you have lots of people making videos, but you have lots of people making, like, they don't know how to name the videos, or they pick topics that are interesting but to a small amount of people. because of that, YouTube will not recommend the videos. So they are very difficult to find. And over time, for example, I know those because I've been searching for those and asking people to send me channel and those kinds of things. So over the years, you pile them up and you see that lots of people do that. But I know, for example, one person is Amberus. He's making a video game with Godot and made lots of videos sharing his progress and findings that are very interesting. But his channel never grew much. I think he's still around 1,000 subscribers after several years. And yeah, that's just that. On YouTube, on social networks these days, you have to do things differently from a teacher's perspective or something like that if you want to grow, because you grow through YouTube recommendations for the most part.
Yeah, and some people are complaining about the clickbait nature. But my most successful YouTube video is actually one called "Why Vulcan Won't Fix God of War." So
Yeah,
that's not
it's
clickbait.
good. Honestly, it's good, and to me, it's not making appealing titles as long as the content afterwards lives up to the promise, because the title and the thumbnail are kind of a promise, right? They grab attention and make people think, oh, I'd like to watch that. So this is fine because you can make very polished, very informative content behind that, right? But you do need, I mean, look, for example, on GDQuest, we have a let's say professional style in the voice and those kinds of things. Like, it's not goofy or anything, but some of the latest thumbnails I've made during the Kickstarter are very much like, there's that thing, the steps to make your first game, and I've taken that meme of the owl. It's like, draw a circle and make the rest of the fucking owl, right? And just retaken it, like, have an idea and make the rest of the fucking game. But then the video is very, it's this kind of voice, and it's informative. I hope it's useful to people, but it helped get YouTube to recommend the video a little bit, right? And people
Yeah,
find it fun, and it's really no problem. I mean, people use memes a lot, and
yeah. I also
there's
saw
a
the
complete
Dodge
separation.
Dodge, of
Yeah.
the latest videos, and I was like curious why why is the Dodge, or is it like any relationship with the Dogecoin, or just like the meme, or
No. No, it's just a meme. It's just because the dog is fun. So this is the last stream for the Kickstarter. I was really
yeah.
tired. I was making that last stream, and I was like, what do we make? And I was like, well, people are very hyped about Godot Falls features. So I'm gonna put the Doge and say very feature, so Godot and those kinds of things, because
Okay.
like, it's very cool, it's very shiny.
Okay. So
But
no
that's it.
NFTs or
No, nothing
yeah,
like that.
because I see on Twitter, like even lately, like Kenny and other Twitter people like started discussing about this NFTs in games and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm not in that train hype, but yeah, a lot of people seem to be already.
You're going to see
Yeah.
them because they are, as any opening market, the NFTs are a good way to make money. Like, if you join the train early, you can make money. I'm not fond of them, but I would say there is really a group of people who are very genuinely interested in NFTs and cryptocurrencies and those kinds of things for political reasons, for example. There's a small
Yeah.
core of those. Then there's a ring of people around them. If you want, there's an art market, right, in the real world, where people speculate and exchange creations from various artists. But digitally speaking, there wasn't that, because what people are buying and exchanging are certificates that the creation is the original, is authentic. And NFTs answer the needs of the people who want to do that with digital creations, because so much art is digital these days. Uh, I'm not too much in those things. I'm not too much in speculation and all, but I can understand that and appreciate that some people generally want to do that, and that, yes, for some artists, it's a way to make a living, including for game creators and all. Then NFTs have many problems. There are many scams at the
Hmm.
moment. It's kind of a Ponzi scheme, so it's going to bubble up and explode, and then it's going to go back to a lower level at some point, I think. And finally, the environmental cost is too high at the moment. I think I was seeing some numbers that any transaction on NFTs is equivalent to about 30 kilograms of emitted CO2 at the moment, because they burn a lot of energy, and most of the electricity produced in the world is carbon based, coal based. So there's this problem. Some companies are trying to address that. There you go. That's what I understand of
Yeah.
NFTs at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, not fond of those things. Like, I'm not into
Yeah.
those things.
No, can you also ban like NFT creation
Ah, Kenny is.
with yeah, the apps that that are
He's
from
very much against that, I think. Yes.
yeah.
The idea, and because you could absolutely support the creators directly, right? But people instead want that kind of market where they can exchange goods, and so um, it funds the artist. But I don't think the goal is to directly fund the artist for the persons who buy expensive NFTs. It's to buy assets that they can later resell or that they can own as part of their wealth, right? So it's very different from, I don't know how it's called in English, but people directly donating money to artists to create things, which is one way to fund them. Uh, it's very NFTs are very different from that. I think that people
Yeah.
are mostly purchasing certificates, right?
For their own benefit, basically, not for the artist.
Absolutely.
So
And also, I don't know how it is, but for example, in France, when you buy art, it's tax free, right? So I don't know if this applies to NFT, probably not, because it's a new field,
yeah.
but people use that as a tax niche to avoid paying more taxes, right?
Yeah,
In
good.
France with art. So I don't know if it could get that way with NFT, but often that's how things work. Like, people have a strong incentive, like personal benefits.
Yeah, yeah, but there are also the classic funding methods like doing a Kickstarter
Yeah.
instead of doing an NFT sale. I mean, you could have opted
Totally.
like to put the course on an NFT, but you chose to go through the um try tried the air to the tried method of just going with a Kickstarter, and it turned out really well. Like the numbers, I think I've been talking with a friend that does not believe Godot has such a huge community to support like these numbers, and I showed like, hey, wait a second, look, we reached like 100K, like, and I don't know the
Yeah.
PayPal stats, but I think people still put after the Kickstarter end. So how if you do like a small retrospective of the Kickstarter campaign that you had, how would that look like?
You mean going back to how it was planned, or just the
Uh,
campaign, how it went compared to our expectations?
right now, yeah, just like a post-mortem, like how
Yeah.
do you feel about it, like how it went?
I expected. So when you put the goal on Kickstarter and you have a bit of experience, the goal is not the real goal. The goal is, when I put 20,000 euros, it's roughly the cost of pre-producing the course and part of the cost of the Kickstarter campaign, right? But the idea is, you put that goal, and if you reach it, you're like, okay, enough people care about that we can make the course, and with the early access and afterwards, we'll be able to get the budget we need, which is over 50,000 euros in total. But then, for me, the I expected 40 to 50,000 euros, right, from the get go. I knew that we would get that because we have a certain amount of number of followers, fans, and because we knew that we're answering people's needs with the product, with the course, right? We've been listening to people and the problems they had. So that was that. And so, to be completely transparent with people, for example, when we make the first stretch goal at 50,000 euros of open sourcing our app to learn GDScript, basically that was our goal from the start, right? So, but as we weren't, I wasn't 100% sure that we would get there. I expected that, but you never know. So then I was like, didn't announce it from the start, and then when it was clear that we were getting there, said we have this stretch goal. Anyway, 140,000 euros. That's roughly what we got in the end, a little more with the PayPal pledges. This is way more than expected and shows a couple of things. One, that the marketing worked, and that the change in strategy and the videos we make on YouTube helped promote Godot. I think there are lots of people who are actually not, like, they saw Godot, they know about it, but they were not actually active users amongst the backers, because they were waiting for something like that to work with Godot and learn programming. And then that this was really answering a need, because it's very important, a general need that people have. That's how you get so many backers on a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I've learned a ton of new things in just like the stuff that you presented right now. But one of the most interesting things that caught my attention was you said you put in like the goal of 20K, 20,000 US dollars or US dollars.
Euros.
Euros. And you expected more. Usually people,
Yeah.
if I would do a Kickstarter, right, I would calculate my costs and I would put like the number probably rounded, like not put like every digit, but put like the full price. Did you came up with this strategy, or how did you find out about it?
Yeah, so it's adapted to what we do. We already have an audience, a shop, and products, and we sell stuff over time. So we know what I'm doing here happens in games where people work with a publisher, and the game maybe costs $100,000 to make, and the publisher says if you can get 20,000 on Kickstarter, then we fund the game, right? So the Kickstarter is just to get the deal with the publisher and get some money, of course, but the publisher wants a proof that people want this game, and so Kickstarter is a great way to check that for us. So it's because we know that we have the ability to sell the courses afterwards. Then it's really a minimal goal, but if you want, it's the threshold at which we are like, okay, if we get that, we do it. If we are below that, we don't do it. But to fund all the work, we need more. Now GDQuest is a company, we have income, etc. So we can take that income, we can cut some other projects and put the money in there to complete. Say we got 30,000 euros, then I can get some of our rolling income to fund the rest of the work. And then it pays back over time, because a course is a kind of product that will sell over time. Next year and in 2 years, it should still be selling, even if less than at the start.
Yeah, and how much work was put in before the campaign?
It's a lot of work. Basically, when you do a Kickstarter and you do a campaign like that, count 10,000. Like, for example, this campaign in marketing work, now I don't really count my hours and stuff like that, but just for the making the content and getting to what we got, it's more than $10,000, let's say, in costs. Paying people to make videos, me working on videos, it's probably more, and knowing that we work at low rates. So if you want the average industry rates, for example, you double that, $20,000 if you pay people normally. And then before the Kickstarter, to prepare the project, we started it in March 2021. But the thing is, that's not planning just the Kickstarter, but it's necessary for the Kickstarter. We pre-produced the course. We planned every single concept that we're going to teach in it. We did proper project planning, and we took a lot of time to ask people, what are your problems? What are the ways in which you think about your problem? Where would you like to get? What are your expectations for such a course, etc. In different ways, but talking with lots of people So probably I've been talking or listening to 1,000 persons regarding this problem of I want to learn game development, but here are my problems. They are not people don't tell the problem directly. Of course, they say there are
Yeah.
not enough tutorials for Godot. Very frequent one. Um, there's this, there's that, right? But then you put it all together and you talk a bit with them, and it's like, well, there are these resources, but wouldn't be more that you are lacking this first stepping stone, and then they're like, oh yeah, I can't find, that's what I'm searching for, I can't find it. And it's like, yeah, okay, this part doesn't exist. So this would be the app we're making to learn GDScript, for example, right? The absolute basics. Like there are some things about the syntax, but you're lacking more things like those. Anyway, before the Kickstarter, March to late September, project planning like part-time. And then 3 weeks before the Kickstarter, I was getting closer to full-time to prepare the communication, the marketing, etc. And then the 2 weeks during the Kickstarter, like working. I don't count hours generally. Like people, like I don't only count the effective work hours, but would be 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
No. Yeah, that's a lot of work. And that's you said also you had other people, so it's a team behind this. So that was just your work hours.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Then others were part-time, doing 1 or 2 videos. So people saw a few new heads, or rather heard a few new voices on the channel. Or so yeah, they helped me make more videos and complete. Like I really wanted to have the same level of quality for every video during the campaign. So each of them, we write the script, we write the code, like we really take the time to polish things. And that takes a lot of work. Often a video will take more than 1 day, especially for some teammates. One video can take 4 days full time, like 8 hours a day, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. But yeah, this is to show that making a successful Kickstarter campaign requires a lot of work behind the scenes. And even if you have all this work, like you put in the work, you put in the hours, if it doesn't successfully reach the critical mass of people that actually support it, it's useless. So yeah, there's usually this consensus that if you put in the work, you'll get results. But if you put in the work and don't get it doesn't get to the people, it's useless. It doesn't matter how much you put in it. So yeah,
No, and I
that's
would say what lots of people do on Kickstarter is actually putting a goal that's way lower than what they need, because they don't have much of an audience, or they're doing something that people don't care so much about, or they are not too keen on doing the necessary work, like hard work to make it, right? You have to do yourself a bit of violence, and you have to be working really hard, doing lots of communication and trying to reach people. So I see that very often with courses, or like ebooks or things like these on Kickstarter. You will see people who put a goal of $5,000, $10,000, and then they have a lot more work than that, and or for games even, and then it's very difficult to complete them, and they don't have enough money, and the quality of the product suffers. And there are a few reasons for that. One is not investing the work. Two is being against the by principle marketing and all, even if you can do it in a way that is genuine to people, right? Three would be not wanting to do something for people, that is, people who design games for themselves and they are very pretty about what they are making, and instead of making an experience that people really want, the players who ultimately the game is for, they make something very much what they want, but then people are not interested because what they want is almost what nobody wants. And this is very common as well. So I'm not talking about the big Kickstarter campaign for people watching us that you mostly see on the front page and all, because they recommend the ones that are doing well. But I'm talking about the majority of campaigns that you don't see because they get very little support, and they suck a lot. And one thing I would like to say regarding marketing and all that I see is people don't ask for advice, don't ask for review before launching their Kickstarter campaign, and all that are mistakes. Like they don't want to do. If they have someone more experienced who can help them, they won't get the help. They don't go out of their ways to change their communication style to do something more effective. It's very interesting. I had heard that from Jonathan Blow when he made the Indie Fund, and he explained that in the Indie Fund, even if there were very experienced people there helping indies, and they had commercial successes and all, that when they would give the indies business design advice, right? So those people very successful, made Braid, made millions of dollars and all, that people don't listen. I can tell you that this is true from experience. The majority of people, it's not everyone, but the vast majority of people, even when they come to ask you for advice, if you don't say what they want to hear, they just won't do it, right? They'll do their thing, they'll fail, and maybe later they'll change, or maybe they won't. I have that experience as well of people sticking to the same thing that doesn't work. Um, Even if you told them that wouldn't work, and even if it failed, and yeah, it's you have to be what I want to say with all that is you have to be really thinking about the people you are working for, right? You
Yeah.
want to let go of your ego or what you want to do, and listen a lot to the people you are working for, you are making the game for, you are making the course for, and they have needs and wishes, and ultimately you are making the experience for them, not for yourself or for you and them. But you'll see that if you listen to them, you can still have a lot of creativity, you can still choose what you are doing, your audience, etc., and you can still very much make a great game that you will appreciate. But if you listen to them, you will also make something they appreciate more, and you will get more customers, more support, and people will be thankful for it, and it feels great in the end. But people, many persons don't do that. That's, I think, why a majority of crowdfunding campaigns fail. And this is really, the numbers are a majority. I think 20 to 30% of game crowdfundings succeed. Video games is a bit less because the tabletop games work much better. Uh, so video games are lots of campaigns that fail, actually, a lot more than tabletop.
Yeah, except Space Citizen, or how is that called? That one was a success. I wanted to ask you. This is how you picked what games you are having in the tutorial, because I've checked the games, and you said like you have taken inspiration from Gungeon and from
Dungeon, The Binding of Isaac.
the Binding of Isaac. So is this how you reached those games? But
No. This time, the final game is really not so important, right? So instead of focusing on game genres, I really wanted to make a course that's like, it's going to teach you to code. So we're going to teach you lots of things with lots of small projects. Now, before producing the course, we don't have all those small demos, because making the app, depending on the level of funding, changes our plans quite a lot. With the app, we can make much smaller assignments and like very small bite-sized practices, while if we had less funding and had to do more like the classical course way, it's a bit different. Anyway, the final project, the choice is entirely educational, with a little bit of action, fun sprinkled on it, but it's really for teaching purposes. So a twin stick shooter, after trying lots of game genres, is really one in which it's very easy to make separate components and to make things that we can teach in isolation and then put together. And so what I wanted for the course since months ago was like, to make the course interesting, we're going to start, you have, I want to teach even to code with, we use a lot of code from other people. So the approach to teaching here is like, You start by using things others made before you. You're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And so the first module, you're going to assemble the game from pre-made components. So it's like drag and drop. You change the properties and all. You play the game, you test, etc. And then you're going to dive back, like take a huge step back and go back through all the basics and learn everything and build up until you can make all that by yourself. So we can very easily have a character, a separate weapon. There are two scenes that work completely in isolation, and then you put the character, you put the weapon on it, and it just works, right? And we can code things in that way, even if you wouldn't code maybe a game in production like that, right? But this is for educational purposes. So, and we can do the same for the levels and the same for the user interface and lots of things. There are always things that are coupled in games, but it really helps us to do that. If you do a turn-based RPG, for example, which would be something quite popular, the problem is all the combat loop for how you manage the turns and the interface and all, it's all intertwined. It's all like that. And so you end up with huge scripts that are not adapted to absolute beginners, right? So that's how we chose it. And then saying it's like the Binding of Isaac or Enter the Gungeon. I was just we had a couple of game genre and ideas for that, right? And I was like, well, these days lots of people want to make action games, adventure games, roguelites, etc. So let's see the games of reference in there, and it's like Enter the Gungeon and the Binding of Isaac were games that lots of people know. So we just say that. And it's also, we want to make the game free and open source. So there's going to be the version for the course that is for educational purposes, and that's really locked for the students, right? To be easy for them to understand and to achieve. And then we are making the game free and open source and building it up. We want to see if we can build something with the community. Now we have a bit more funding,
that's
right?
Very interesting.
Yeah. And so this kind of game is also easy for people to contribute to, because we can say, well, making a new weapon, making a new enemy kind, and those kinds of things, those can be made fairly in isolation. When we tried with OpenRPG to do that, the code was, again, very intertwined. It was very difficult to split, so very difficult to contribute to, especially the interactions between the UI things and all. You had lots of signals that needed to travel, and all of that was difficult. But using basically a game based on the physics engine makes that very easy, because the tight coupling and handling of interactions happens under the hood in the engine.
Yeah, it's a good point, and yeah, also the pick, now I understand it better, makes more sense. And the fact that you're gonna release so basically it's the full game with the full source code that you're gonna release for free. Yeah. That's for free. I mean, like you're gonna open source it. So of course,
and we want to eventually, if we manage to get a complete game, small but polished, it would certainly be on itch.io and Steam, for example, for free as well, right? Absolutely no cost. Just to promote Godot. To say, like, here's a complete game you can look at how it's made in Godot, that the code is simple, it's concise with GDScript and all. We can't make an open 3D game like the kind of AAA experience that people think Godot would need. That would be good. Perhaps they can do it more easily on the Godot side, right? With a few sponsors. We don't have that kind of budget and time to do that, but I think we can make a very polished 2D game, which is really where Godot shines, and then make it as, if you want, a showcase of what you can do with Godot, but not like just a finished game, but saying this is made by the Godot community, by lots of people who aren't necessarily professionals. You can make a great game. And it looks good. We have an experienced artist to work on it. I'm looking for an experienced game designer as well to set very strong foundations, right? Because it's going to be a bit community driven. So you need very strong foundations to frame what everyone's doing. And And so something that looks very good, that feels very good, that sounds very good. We have an experienced sound designer who's going to work with us as well. Anfa, for those who know him, looking to work
Oh,
with him.
Anfa. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's doing a multiplayer tutorial or multiplayer game.
Is he? I remember he was working on some kind of platform game where you controlled an animal. I don't know what he's doing lately. I just know that he does. He's a professional sound designer and music producer who works in video games with only free and open source software.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah, we also have some questions from the chat.
Sure.
So Danilo asks, do you have plans or future plans to release courses in other tools, especially tools that can create content for Godot, like Blender or Krita, the ones that you used in the past in your channel?
I would say for now, no. We're fully focused on Godot. For Blender, there are so many persons making courses, and you will find great ones. If you want to do animation, go see Emeric Picot. He's the best of the best. Like we couldn't match that. If you want to learn, I don't know, modeling and art for games, there are the people from Creative Shrimps. They do good stuff for video games specifically. I'm not sure right now, but I know there were some companies making very, very good things for that. And you have a million free tutorials for Blender right now. So if we were going to do that, it's like, well, we wouldn't do better. I mean, I've worked as a 3D artist, but it's in the past now, and um, you need a lot of time to get the experience to know the best techniques, the best workflows, right? To be very productive with that, and you'll find them with other people. And then Krita, the problem is for these days, I would say, yeah, for games, for digital painting, like you have a lot of content for Krita. It's not specific to games, but it's good enough. I think like the game parts are not so much. And so uh, what I'm getting to is to do that well, we need to invest a lot of time and energy into that. If we were to make, I think Krita, you have all the content you need in other places, except for a small part that yes, we could cover, but if we covered just that, people would be disappointed that we don't do all the rest, right? So there's a bit of that all of nothing kind of aspect to it that people expect. And it's like, I would only do the small part that is specific to games. That is how you size the sprites, how you export them in the game engine, and some constraints you have, right, in games, how you want to do the proportions and those kinds of things. But it's very quick. You can explain that in 30 minutes worth of content, right? And then learning digital painting is going to take you years, and you need to learn lots of things. So I prefer to put all that energy into Godot because there's a lot to do, and that's where we have the most experience. And because of having been working on Godot and with Godot for so many years between several persons in the team, like we have people who are with Godot since the beginning. So you have experience that maybe other content creators who are starting now or discovering Godot don't have. So this is really where we can bring you very valuable things. While if we were to do Krita Inkscape, yeah, I know some things that could be interesting, but at the same time, I think we can make more valuable stuff with Godot. Also, every time we're going to do Inkscape or Blender or something like that, like other people who are following the channel just for Godot won't be interested, right? So they will unsubscribe or those kinds of things happen as well. We would need a separate channel, separate project for that. That would be too much time and energy away from Godot.
Makes
So the short
total
answer
sense.
was
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. No. The part I know for sure. Like if your audience comes for something and then you start doing something else, then the initial one will just leave. So it's a natural. I mean, they'll leave anyways at some point. Some.
Yeah.
Because the churn rate is real.
Yeah.
Someone non-unknown is asking, do you have plans for any Godot source code tutorials in C++?
For now, no. Making a video about how to contribute to Godot, yes, that was, I wrote the script for one already, but maybe I'm going to make it a bit more informal just to share the process. The thing is, going over the source code, it's like every area is very different. Like if you want to introduce how each system works, you will have, if you want to do the full source code or the most important areas, it's a ton of work. Everything works a bit differently. Like there are lots of isolated modules. So it's like, and well, if someone is a C++ developer, they don't need that at all, right? So I don't see much value and much interest in that. Like um, people probably wouldn't get what they would expect if we were to do that, right? You can give
Yeah.
a quick overview of the systems, but other core developers are much, much better at that, right? They will do a much better job. They already know the internals and those kinds of things. So I think it would be interesting if they did that, if they want to onboard more contributors. But what I want to do is GD native stuff, right? Because or GD extensions, the next version that is writing C++ code without recompiling the engine for very high performance code in Godot. Or you can do it with Rust, or you can do it with other languages, D, Nim, whatever. But the thing that's interesting about that is the API, then the way you code when you use that is about the same as coding inside Godot. So this is very valuable because you learn to do it for your game and to solve problems in your game projects. So to have very high performance code. And then you learn some of how Godot works under the hood, right? Um, I think I would be more interested in doing that. And then the day you jump into the Godot source code, you're like, oh, this is actually the macros and the I use in GD extensions are the same they use in the engine. So I already know how to do that. Yeah. But yeah, the C++, it's really, after looking at the source code and all, like every area is very specific. So you can't go very in general, make a video that will, if someone wants to contribute to the rendering and the 2D and 3D is completely different. And if they want to do physics, it's completely different, right? So it's like you can show one of those things, but then very few persons would be interested.
Okay. And Aknakos asks, do you think you or wish to do courses in other that showcase Godot for other stuff than games? For example, applications. A lot of people these days actually pick Godot and use it for UI stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a different market.
Yeah, that's a low priority. Basically, we're thinking of the more general teaching user interface. So for games and tools and applications, like all in one package, rather than making something dedicated to applications that almost nobody cares about. To be honest, it's like the same thing. I would be very interested in making tutorials about how to make plugins in Godot. The problem is it's still too niche, and while we would make probably a couple of free tutorials, some people always ask for a course, but it's like, yeah, we could make one, but that would take 3 months, and maybe 50% persons would like it and buy it, right? At least we have that model where we have that ultimate bundle kind of thing, like lifetime purchases that people get, so they can kind of we can kind of use that to fund some things that are a bit niche, like doing add-ons or doing VR with Godot, which is very powerful, but still not so many persons want to use it yet. So we could do some of that, but then instead we can do user interface in general, and it's like every Godot user needs that, and lots of people want that, so we will do that in priority. The big priorities, to be transparent, for us are going to be next year UI 3D when Godot 4 comes out, right? But then there are also networking, artificial intelligence, that would come before making add-ons, tools, app development, even if I personally find those things very interesting, right? But it's really based on what people want at large and what people need at large.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, when you're saying nobody wants it, it's not like nobody wants it, but it's, to clarify, it's like the critical mass that can actually, when you do the sale, makes sense for you to invest that time in the beginning.
Yeah.
So because people here might say, but I'm interested in that, please do it. Yeah. But in YouTube terms, like when we are saying, yeah, no one is interested, it's not like you are not interested or you are not interested. It's more a generic term. Like it's critical mass
There are
is
not enough people, right? But it's also, even when some people say, will you do that? And I'm interested, then as I was saying, like maybe you make that course to make add-ons, and maybe over 3 months, 50 persons buy it, and it's like it doesn't pay at all for the invested cost, uh, and that's also because the majority of people who are going to make add-ons, like actual big plugins, are somewhat experienced developers, and they don't want a course like that. Like they don't need, they're not interested. They'll just figure it out through practice. Um, so it's it's too niche. There we go. It's not enough people want it. It's a matter of priorities. So many more persons want and need the other things that it's a disservice to ourselves and to the people, to the Godot community, to do that in priority, to do the add-ons or the app things.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's move on to some questions regarding Godot. So if someone random comes to you that doesn't have any game development experience at all and asks you to recommend an engine, of course, probably you would recommend Godot, but there needs to be a why, a reason why you would like. How would you argument your decision? So what would that be?
I do recommend generally two things. I don't only recommend Godot, but GDevelop and Godot. Both are completely free and open source. GDevelop is like the free and open source alternative to Construct, right? And it's a very interesting project as well. When it comes to Godot, it depends on the person's case. I try to be very honest. For example, if people say, hey, I'm a professional game developer, I'm interested in Godot, we're looking into what to use for our next project, and they tell me our project is that kind of 3D game, blah, 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 I would say, well, maybe don't use Godot just yet. So I'm not always recommending Godot. Now, if someone wants to learn programming and game development, I often recommend Godot because the way it works is much more accessible and intuitive than Unity. Unity, which is often the alternative, so people often think of Unity, Unreal, Godot, and they're looking for something with an editor that's free to get started, right? And with complete tools for level design, and also you don't have to do everything using code. And so to those people, I often recommend Godot because Unity, like Unreal, use programming patterns that are already designed and intended for experienced developers. Sometimes it's difficult to see why, but the entity component system of Unity is something that's difficult to master, and it's very easy to do things that will get you stuck with it. Not that you can't get stuck with Godot, because programming is always difficult and programming games is always difficult, but I think that the way it works in Godot, it really incentivizes some basic object-oriented imperative code that is imperative is the easiest to grasp for beginners, right? I write this instruction, the computer does exactly that, right? Then when you add the abstraction of object-oriented programming, it becomes a bit more difficult. And when you add the abstraction of entity components and how you structure them and all, it becomes even more difficult. I'm really talking about beginners, right, in that regard. So Godot pushes you to to have a tree of nodes where when you go down, they get a bit specialized, and even the way the coding works in the editor. For example, when you get a node, by default, it will autocomplete the ones that are below the current one. So it won't, by default, let you very easily autocomplete the parent nodes or nodes in other branches and all, which is a sane way to get started, right? It will avoid lots of hurdles. The language is simpler as well than C#, GDScript. Like to get started, I think it's very good that you don't have too much syntax. It's not too overwhelming. C# is very powerful and it lets you do things like if you want to do low-level programming kinda with C#, you can. You can do unsafe operations. You can do lots of things. You can do pointer math or whatnot if you want. Of course, when you're getting started, you don't want to do that. But what I mean is that there is a ton of syntax and a ton of concepts that GDScript just doesn't have. And when you're just getting started and you want to learn, it's better to me to have fewer options, right? So for that as well, I like languages like GDScript. It could be another one, to be honest. I don't necessarily recommend Python, for example, because it's a mass. Well, I've recommended it to learn Godot, but I think languages like Lua can be good because they are very, very limited in what options you have to code, right? So more and more these days, I tend to recommend those things. Less syntax and a more imperative style to get started with some object-oriented. Godot is very object-oriented, but this is very hidden from you when you use the engine, I think. That is, you just write functions and data, and they are on a script that attaches to a node, and the operations implicitly apply to the node. I've found this easy to teach, basically. That if you try to teach in very concrete terms, it's like when you write the code, when you put the script, you physically attach the script to the node. So it makes sense that when you write a function or something like that, it is called by default on the node to which you attach the script, right? And it's easy to have that click in people's minds. So hopefully that's the general explanation. Honestly, it's always a bit difficult because then people will say, yeah, but in Unity you have Bolt, so you have visual programming, and that's more accessible. And I'm like, well, no, I've looked at Bolt. I think Unreal's Blueprint are more interesting. It seems Bolt suffers from the same problems as the visual script in Godot, that it's a very complete solution, like to do all the programming in that language and with very basic operations. Like you have very basic building blocks instead of having higher level constructs that simplify programming. I think Blueprint that was based like before they already had something like that when I studied the Unreal Engine 3 called Kismet, and it was a very specialized language. Like the blocks were very much to create FPS games, as far as I remember, like the built-in ones. And they extended that with Blueprint, but keeping that philosophy of it's a language for level designers, for scripters. And so it's a bit higher level at first. Like you have lots of tools that save you a lot of time compared to writing all the code yourself. Yeah, I don't know if this is a satisfying explanation, but
it is. No, yeah, the blueprints actually now I understand why because I tried Bolt, I tried Blueprint, I tried all the stuff basically, and I got in the same thing, but I could not point at why blueprints are better than Bolt or Godot's visual scripting. But now it makes sense because they're even higher level. So now it makes sense.
I think if you want to do visual scripting right in a game engine in particular, you want something like that. Like the tool, it's not only about making it so you can't make syntax errors, which is often the thing people point, or making it feel friendly or look friendly because you connect boxes. But you also want to remove a layer of complexity and I think make the tools very specific. I'm very much like, for example, Visual Script in Godot. I think if you have a team and you make your custom blocks for your teammates, for example, you have a quest system right? And you have a game designer in your team who's not a coder and who should be designing the quests. You make very specific blocks for start quests, update quest, finish quest, those kinds of things, and they can use Visual Script. So you can do that in Godot, and I think that's the best use of it at the moment. But trying to code a game, it's like it's too slow, it's too connecting the blocks, takes too much time. GScript has that kind of learning, if you want, threshold or something. Like it can stop people a bit at first, the syntax errors, but you soon get over them very quickly, and then you save a lot of time compared to using visual scripting. Everyone's aware of that in the Godot core development team, and they know that there's a need for a redesign because people don't use visual script much because of that, right? Because of it's like GDScript, but it's slower to use, basically.
Okay, yeah, because there is a question from Aaron Frank saying if there are any plans to fund the Visual Script development. And yeah, this goes hand in hand with, even I receive now a lot of people that are coming to me and they don't have any development background and they are scared, or I don't know, about learning to program, and they just want a visual script. And people in the servers, they do point them to the visual script of Godot, but I think, yeah, as you said, something was wrong. I could not point it, but I still don't know if, I mean, I still recommend them to learn GD script instead of the visual script.
So to answer you, Aaron, and I just want to answer first. So they sees. I'm not sure how you pronounce
Sosa
that.
sees.
Yeah, that you can make visual script blocks in GDScript. Yes, and that's a very good way to use a language. And probably you can make them in C++ or whatnot. Regarding funding Visual Script, we discussed that with Yuri, who we just hired as part of the Kickstarter. Just so everyone knows, we said that we would put 10,000 euros to hire a developer. We're actually hiring two and putting a bit more money. One on the animation editor that needs improvements to the interface, and one right now, Yuri, who's a core contributor as well, he is starting with the user interface thing. So the way we did things is we look at the budget, we look at the proposals, and we prioritize them by they fit the budget and they benefit to the most people. So we found that this one was the one that would benefit the most. We discussed Visual Script. The problem with Visual Script is I think the amount of funding needed is not as much, but a bit like the tilemap editor, because you need someone who's going to do language design. And you have to do a lot of research on user experience and not so much UI design, but user experience design for the language. Probably looking at Blueprint, to be honest, because I think it's the best in class right now. And see all the things that you need for people to be able to use the language to make full games, but at the same time, for it to feel higher level, to abstract away implementation details without necessarily compromising too much on performance. And you kind of need all those things, because I think the people who will use it will expect, are the kinds of people who expect things to just work and to just be fast, efficient, and easy, and who don't care about the details, like knowing about all the operations you need to do, combining lots of blocks and all. And perhaps the Blender node system, or their old block-based programming that they had in Blender was, I heard it was pretty good. I didn't get to use it with the B3D engine. So I would say, looking at it, I don't have a clear idea of the budget for that, but I think we'd need to put at least just in that 20,000 euros maybe, and a couple months of work. Because of all the research, because of all the making the features, then putting it in the hands of users and seeing that they, because the way we know that Visual Script needs a redesign, it's not because the person who made it was an idiot, right? At all. It's because with those things, very often you first make the thing, you put it in the hands of people, and then you start to see the shortcomings. GDScript 2 is an example of that. There was GDScript, it evolved, and then you get to a point where it's like, well, we know that we have to change all those things, but to do that, we need to break compatibility and we need to rewrite the GDScript compiler and those kinds of things. And then it takes 1 year, right, or something. Or
Yeah.
Visual Script is maybe not in this case, but uh, basically we agreed with Yuri that we knew it would cost a lot and would take a lot of time, and it doesn't benefit all the users as well.
Or
It's like certain kind of users.
yeah, where there's another option that that the Godot team can do, like if they would have like an asset store, and someone would create like Bolt, because Bolt was not created by Unity. Bolt was created by
Yeah.
another developer, and they sold it, and at some point Unity just bought it when it was ready,
Yeah.
so to say. So you can just like let other people do the tools, and this strategy was actually not the first time Unity used it.
Yeah,
I
they do
think
that a lot.
they did that for also the UI. It was another
Yeah.
UI system before, so they just incorporated that into the main engine, Bolt as well, and some other systems as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, you can just take those 20k euros and put it in in making like the proper asset store, and then you'll get people to put in the other tools and incorporate them in the fringes.
Actually, I know that the Godot developers, the team, perhaps with some other people, are working on that. The legal part is complicated to make a commercial asset store, an asset store that would still be free and open source, but allow creators to sell assets, tools, add-ons, which is kind of needed. There are a few community ones, but they don't have what it takes to take off at the moment. So that is eventually coming. Those kinds of things are very long to make. I know that because at GDQuest we thought about, well, let's just, at some point we need that asset store. We can perhaps do it. And we were like, okay, let's see if we can do it. And then people were like, no, but actually we're already working on one at Godot. So then we're like, okay, that's a very good news. I think it's good that they do that. And if they can do something like the Blender market where people can donate a little bit to Godot, that will be very good for them. But very good for the creators. Because, yeah, those things, I don't think it will ever happen like that with Godot. And contrary to Unity, for Unity, it happens as well because people don't have access to the source code, so they can't contribute more directly to Unity, right? But with Godot, it's much easier. So, and I don't think like Unity has billions of dollars literally. So even buying a tool like that for $1 million is nothing for them. Like they make over $1 billion a year, right? I think that's their current revenue. But so for Godot, it might be a bit trickier. But yeah, doing the thing on the side and then eventually merging it or contributing it to Godot, that's how we already we around Godot do some things. Some of the plugins, for example, for text editors are like that. It's like someone makes the plugin and then we're like, yeah, we made it. Do you want it? We put it in the Godot organization, and people are like, yeah, go ahead, and it's part of Godot. There are a couple of projects like that. So
yeah, nice.
But the visual script, I don't see someone investing. Like it's already, you have lots of stuff in Godot, so I think it makes sense that you would directly invest time contributing to Godot. But you really need a person to have a vision for something like visual script. Like for language design, you need someone who's going to do both development and design work at the same time. It's like making a game.
Yeah. It's yep. Maybe right now it's too much work with too little rewards.
For me, it's really with regards to where we are putting the money. We really there are so many things to work on, and there are some things that are very clear. Okay, a couple of $1,000, we can do that, and that improves the lives of everyone in Godot. So it's like, let's do it. We do that in priority. And we've looked at the proposals that the Godot developers, like nobody in the team can tackle them right now because everyone's busy. So it's like the UI thing is, I hadn't thought about it at first, but Yuri said, here are the proposals I know that could benefit lots of people. And he sent that one. And basically, the plan is, make it clear for people, making UIs like the inspector for the control nodes in Godot is very confusing. You have lots of settings, and depending on the context, if you use containers, nodes inside containers, and all, lots of settings, you can edit them, but they don't do anything. Or they do something in the editor, and you move something, and it goes back in place. And so people get very confused by that. And it's been like that for years since Godot was released. So there's that proposal. Now that the inspector can be much more flexible to make it very custom for the control nodes, and depending on the context, things gray out, and you have a little warning maybe that says, like, you can't edit that because blah blah blah, because this node is inside a container, and all this will have no effect, right? And also to move all the properties, so the ones you really want will be at the top, instead of having lots of things. Like, you still have the anchors and the margins that you almost absolutely never, or you never need, at least, to edit them by hand, almost, but still they are the ones at the top, instead of the position size, and I don't know, the size flags maybe that you would maybe want to edit more often. So Yuri is going to do all that work of making that much more intuitive. It's still going to be complex, because that's just, Godot has a full UI framework, but if you look at the GTK, Qt, all those things that are very, very complex as well. All the UI frameworks for software development, right? So that's to be expected, but at least your experience making user interface with Godot should be much, much easier, and will be much easier to teach for us as well, because it's difficult to teach too.
Yeah, yes, you simplify work, but yeah, kind of this to make it easier for people, because if they might feel like the engine is working against them, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially for beginners when they are struggling to just understand the core concepts, and they don't see, like, why is this not working. I mean, for the experienced developers, they'll just, like, try to figure out what's wrong. But beginners, I've seen a lot of cases where they say, oh, it's not good, bad engine, moving to Unity, and story over, and game over, basically. And I don't know how many things we need to upgrade to Godot in order for them to not just switch to another engine.
Well, I think first, it doesn't matter that how can I say? Not that it doesn't matter, but there will always be people switching just because they don't like how it looks, how this thing works, that thing works, because they did something wrong, because they didn't find the very specific tutorial they were looking for. But those are not too important, because they switch from any tool just because they don't like the tool, or because due to some context, they tried to do something too difficult compared to their skills. They tried that with Godot, and they failed, and they gained some experience. They don't realize that, but they go to another engine, and then they have that experience of the failure. So they find a more suitable project, and they succeed at it, and they think, that engine was bad, this one is good, right? This one I didn't understand, this one is good. And the truth is, they gained experience with that engine, and they failed, which is normal when you learn to program, and they went to that other engine with that new experience, and then it was easier.
Bastards.
So this is very common. Those kinds of things are going to happen. I do think absolutely for the UI stuff, there's a need to simplify it greatly, because it's problematic for everyone. That is, the core developers who work with it all the time, you learn to do things. I learned to do things with the UI, some people do. But even very experienced developers, even people who have experience doing UI development, they get confused by those things. So this is a good sign that this really needs a redesign. People in my team, some of whom are experienced and they work hard and those kinds of things, like I've trained some other people in my team when it comes to UI, and I said, no, don't do this like that, or no, you can do this like this, because I've been in touch with the person who kind of redesigned the UI workflow already from the start, from Godot 3, and I've bumped into all the issues that you will bump into. So And it's like there are ways that are way simpler and way more flexible to do UIs. When I see how people do UIs most of the time with Godot, it's also that there's a need for a bit of documentation just to tell them, don't do, if you're going to do a complex interface, I would not recommend doing a huge scene with 100 UI nodes with one script at the top that does everything, right? And I've seen that a lot, especially in the open source repositories around Godot. It will work up to a certain size, but then they say, yeah, if I move something that breaks, it's a mess and those kinds of things. And there are ways you do those kinds of UIs. One thing I learned from the another project, source code, RPG Maker source code, I saw how when they pop menus, open things, basically they create the components on the fly. So they instantiate everything, and when you close, you destroy everything. So there are things like those, and making smaller components and all. If you do that, it's much, much easier to maintain your UI in Godot. That's at least one way to do things. I think there are 2 or 3 approaches like those that can work, but there's a need to teach all that in the docs, perhaps on top of making the interface much more intuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah, and now that I think of, we do have a tutorial right now in this GoGodotJam, like one event, how to make a main menu in Godot. So if anyone is interested in that, the events are linked in the pinned comment. But yeah, it's also I've discussed with Rayus, the contributor, the host that made this, and there are not a lot of tutorials regarding this part. So yeah, we definitely need to have this kind of stuff as well.
Because it's difficult to learn, it's also difficult to teach. Honestly, the way it works right now, we planned basically a free guide for UI, and you have the problem of you have to say this thing works in that context, but it doesn't in that, and it doesn't, and you instantly have information overload. So now I'm thinking, well, this guide, maybe we're going to wait until there's that UI redesign just to teach that, because we're preparing the guide, we instantly see how this is complex. Like, instead of just showing one thing that's intuitive, we have to teach 3, 4, 5 pieces of information with many others surrounding it. And this is more than people naturally handle when they are learning, like when this is really completely new. When you take not the person who has experience doing UI development in other kits and all, and so they kind of have some strong foundations, but the beginners, for example, coming to Godot, like UI stuff is instant information overload, the way it is right now.
Yeah.
You can't really go around it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's good. Non-unknown asks, Nathan, PC Master Race.
What is it?
PC Master Race. Like if you...
Yeah. Is it like you buy big computers?
Yeah, you're like a PC gamer, or like not the console peasant, you know, the so it's either PC Master Race or the console peasant.
No, and well, personally, first for the, let's say, ecological footprint, I try to avoid changing devices too much, and so I don't have the fastest gaming PC right now. I do have a laptop because I had to move around the world, right? And I did have to change my computer because the previous one had constant issues, and they sent me back a broken one, and then it was out of warranty, and it was like, well, I had to get a new one. But so I'm the kind who I would just buy a computer tailored for work. We do want to do some 3D and stuff. Like, this one is very good, but when I'm back in France, I might buy a more powerful and more upgradable computer. But no, I won't play that much. There's one thing I want to play. I'm sorry, it's just not available on PC, because I would prefer to play on PC. But it's Final Fantasy VII, the remake. I played it on PlayStation 4 because someone I know had a PlayStation 4, and I'm the kind who would rent rather the games and the device, if possible, just um, to do those kinds of things. And same thing for the PC. Maybe I would find a way. There are those streaming services, for example. I don't know if it's good enough these days, but if you have a very good ping, maybe you really, really want to do a game, you subscribe, you play the game, and you don't buy a new, much more powerful PC or console, those kinds of things, just to play those. But yeah, anyway, with work, these days, I don't have time to play. I don't have time to do my personal stuff anymore so much. Now I'm trying to learn new programming languages, but basically in my free time, I will find a thing that I can do that is a little personal, but that's also related to work because I don't have time to do. Like I love to do music, for example. I studied music scoring, and it's like I would do hip hop and all, and I just don't have time at all.
Oh, that would be great to see some GDQuest hip hop. I think people would love to see other sides of you. Once you reach a certain threshold of the community, people do want to see more different stuff, I would say. So as Patrick asks, what indie games did you play lately?
Lately, I tried a few demos. Before the Kickstarter, I played Lil Gator, the demo. Like it's kind of wholesome game where it's just a very short demo. That's more like what I play these days. I'm going to try a game for 30 minutes or play the demo, all those kinds of things. So that was one. I tried a couple of other demos, but if the game is not good or I don't really like it, I will drop it within a couple of minutes. So there were a couple, like when there was that Steam festival where there were lots of Godot game demos, and I tried a couple of games from there, right? One I bought as well was Heroes of Hammerwatch, but it's not my kind of game, so I dropped it almost instantly. Yeah, there you go. That would be the one that really struck me. The last one that's really perhaps my favorite game of all time is A Short Hike. And this is like the kind of game I would like to work on. It's a game where you hike a mountain, you're a little bird, and you're going to find feathers that allow you to climb. Little Gator is very much in that. They took inspiration from it, I think. And so it's same wholesome story, but it's more importantly a game about the experience you have hiking and exploring a mountain until you reach the top. And it's very well designed. It's short. It's everything I like about, like, you don't have grinding, you don't have extra fluff. You just have the pure most appealing parts of the experience, right?
And you finish it in 1.5 hours and then you refund it.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. No, I think it takes a bit over 2 hours, but yeah, there's that thing with players. To be honest, it's a bit sad when you see that, because lots of people seem to actually do that, right? It's really, if people can get the game for free, they will do it.
They'll do it, yeah. Unfortunately, for game developers that want to offer an experience, because not all the games are I don't know, roguelites and infinite replayability, multiplayer. Some might offer people an experience or a single player story, but if that one is shorter than 2 hours, some people will just refund it.
Yeah, and it seems to be a large amount. To be honest, I quit game development myself because of that, because I wanted to do those kinds of games and things that were experimental, where you spend maybe 3 months in development and maybe the game is 30 minutes long and you can't sell it. And these days in particular, for example, if you go on mobile, and I've been looking a bit at the game that were being made lately, and I see there's a lot of grinding, like there's a lot of those patterns that are exploitative of the player, like that are very much into using psychology to get the person to play as much as possible. And with people who say like $1 game, the game was only 40 hours long, fuck you, to the developer, or you see things like those, and it's like, My God.
Have you seen the Mrs.'s TikTok replies?
No, I didn't see them.
So he posted on TikTok, and
Mm.
the video got like 1 million views or something. And
Yeah.
some people say, "Are you gonna release the game for free?" Or or another one was, "If it's over $10, I'm gonna pirate it."
Yeah. Yeah. But people pirate stuff a lot. They will
Yeah.
pirate your game. It's you have to know those kinds of things. It's just how it is. Even if you do regional prices and all, your clients are the persons who don't like the persons you should focus on, because there are persons who absolutely either there are cases where there are persons from developing countries who really have nothing, right? I live in a developing country, so it's if those persons personally pirate, it's like it's not great because you have a lot of free stuff available and you should use that, I think. But at least it's not the same as I've known someone who made a very, very good living, like had a lot of money and who would pirate everything. Be like, they don't need my money or stuff like that. And that kind, it's like in those cases when you make $10,000 a month, maybe, or $5,000 a month, you should buy your games, really. A
Yeah.
game developer in this case. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it sucks, but um, uh, it's really people find all kinds of excuses for piracy, and they are really insane because even if we, for example, do two things: A, we have regional prices. Well, we do three things. B, if you really don't have money, if someone they come to us and they say, I can't afford those kinds of courses. I would really, really want that one course or something like that. It's like exceptional situation. We will make an exceptional discount. Uh, and up to people who say, I absolutely can't buy those things. Like my life is like this, like that. And I've gifted copies of courses as well. We do those things. People still pirate. 2 days ago, there was someone on the Spanish Godot Facebook group who posted, "Hey, I have the courses from GDQuest. Tell me, I will send you all the files," like publicly. And no problem, people don't think there's a problem. And then it's other people who reply and say, no, but they do those discounts and those kinds of things. And then the person was like, okay, I'm going to remove the post. But still, people will say, hey, then when he said that, I will remove the post. In another post, people are like, hey, where's the link to download all the courses for free? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So that's how it is. I want to say to everyone making games, that will happen. And that will happen to you, to your game. Maybe you won't see it. Maybe you will because a player will tell you. But people pirate to a level. There are the users who pirate the game, and then there are the shady companies in some countries who do take your games and make asset flips from them, and who do extract all the assets and repost them on the app stores and those kinds of things. And it happens to every game studio, pretty much, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think though, like so we shouldn't be too worried about these people because these were never our clients. I mean,
Absolutely.
if we even if we put like the most secure DRM possible, they would never buy from us in the first place. So it doesn't matter. So yeah, you basically get one more player, which otherwise wouldn't have been your player at all, or a course student, or what's the
I
case.
would object to the DRM thing because I really think that if AAA studios do that, is that they do see a difference. Now, um, is it the best approach? Maybe not. Maybe I think there are good approaches like guerrilla kind of stuff where you post the pirated game yourself first. Um, I think it can be good, like you make a pirated version and you change a bit the content or they get blocked at some point, but you make this the most popular pirated copy, and then people will get stuck and they will quit the pirated copy maybe to purchase the game or something. I don't know what is best, but I those big companies, when they put hundreds of millions of dollars in a game, they have people who do data science right in the team, and I think there is more to it than just thinking they need the DRM for philosophical reasons. One thing, for example, is the games from CD Projekt that don't have DRMs have absolute records in terms of piracy. But like The Witcher 3 was absolutely insane, and it's very simple because you can just share the game. You don't need any crack, let's say, or those kinds of things, and you can just run the game. And it had record high piracy levels. And so saying those wouldn't be clients in the first place, no, it's very convenient for people who pirate. It's very convenient. They just download the game and run it, right? They don't have the extra steps of putting the credit card details and those kinds of things. So it's just to say, I don't know, because this is often an argument of those people don't matter. I think, for example, what we do, saying we have regional prices for people in Latin America and other places, at least when someone talks about piracy, someone else will say, hey, they do special prices from us. They're nice. We should support them, right? So at least you get that. And then, I have that example of the guy who removed the post. But if we only sold at the highest price and all, maybe he wouldn't have, and it would have had to be deleted by an admin, right? So yeah, it's difficult, but it is certain that at least you should focus on the people who support you, right? That is absolutely listen to them more, help them more, etc. But you shouldn't be trying to chase the pirated copies and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also like looking at the chat right now because another discussion is going. So there are two topics. One, of course, is your course, and John asks like if the course will be free, because Patrick said the Kickstarter method financing the course and then make it open source. I think it's not going to be free, but just the game is going to be open source. The game out of that.
So the app. Basically, there's a paid course, and there is an app to learn GDScript that will be available to the whole Godot community. So this app is like Codecademy stuff, and this one will be free and open source. And the complete course to learn programming from zero, where we're going to cover more concepts and all, will be a paid product. As far as the price, well, it's in our typical fashion. It was let's say, most affordable without, if you don't apply for regional discounts, it was most affordable during the Kickstarter, and then the price goes up, and probably, I think, around $100 for the finished version, right? So then if you are from different regions of the world, it will be cheaper, and that's all I was saying that applies. That's how it is. One thing to mention is on Kickstarter, because people often think of Kickstarter as some kind of donation, or Patreon as some kind of donation. But no, when people fund a Kickstarter like ours, they pre-order a course at a lower price. Basically, that's what the majority are doing. There are some people who really donate and really believe in open source and those kinds of things. But so you are selling a product from the start, and that was explicit during the Kickstarter, and that it's a bit confusing, of course, that the app is open source and the course is paid, but that's the idea. And you can't then make the product completely free, because there are lots of people who came like we paid for a product, and if you say now we make everything free, if we reach that amount, then people cancel their pledges massively, and you just don't reach the goal. That's how it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you just like, even if it's a lot of money, like how the campaign is, it like to be able to just have that and that's it, like for the course, is not, like, I would say efficient for the business, because the business needs to grow, and even if it's like reached the full potential, you can use that money to fund other stuff, like as you mentioned before, funding more niche stuff that some other people need, but they're too little to create that critical mass to support that. So kind of that's the point. And yeah, John asked, like, it was like $100 said. I think, yeah.
Yeah. It would be the final price, so probably during early access it will be a bit cheaper. But the thing is, because it was at 40 euros during the Kickstarter, after the campaign, we raised the price, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And that would be the final price. Then with sometimes we run discounts and those kinds of things, but
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. We also have some. I think we're running out of time, but I'll go quickly through the questions that people asked in this. There are not so many, so I'll just quickly go through them. So I heard that GDQuest means Godot Quest, but I also heard that the name means Game Design Quest. Which one is true, or are both true?
they are both true. GDQuest is whatever you want, you know. It's but yeah, it's kind of Godot these days. Like the idea was game development if you want, but GDQuest is shorter, so it's much better. But as we do so much Godot, now you can think of it as Godot because we are a contributor and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. GDScript is most useful for its rapid prototyping. However, we need a bit more performance. We have option of either going with C# or GD native. What would be your preference between these two options and why? If you want performance, basically.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you have C# developers in your team and you need the performance, if you want calling methods on the backend from C# compared to GDScript is not going to be much more performant. I think now they have that thing of pointer calls. I'm not very experienced in C#, but so it has a bit better performance than GDScript in that regard. But still, there is an overhead of calling functions on the backend from C#. So if most of the code you need to do is like that, C# is not going to be so much more performant than GDScript. However, if it is to implement an algorithm like procedural generation or something specific, you can do it in C# if you have a C# developer. If you have someone who does something else, someone who's already very experienced in C++, use C++. If you have someone who's very experienced in Rust, you can use Rust, it seems. I don't know if it supports all the target platforms, but so you have those options. Personally, in my team, I would go GDScript C++, and if need be, GDScript and C++ module, because compiling Godot is fairly easy and creating a module is fairly easy, considering it's C++, right? If you know how to compile a program, if you've done some C++, it's fairly easy. If you've never done that, maybe C# will be more convenient because at least it compiles the C# code when running the game in Godot with the Mono edition. A reason I would recommend C++ and a module is that, or at least GD native, is that if you're going to have an isolated bit of code in like a very high performance algorithm or something like that, you compile it once, it doesn't move, and then you keep the speed of pressing F5 when you work with GDScript, and boom, it instantly launches the game, and hot reloading and those kinds of things, which are not available with C#. Well, if you start to mix in C# in your project, C# developers would have to confirm, but I think the compilation, launching the game every time is a bit slower. So over the course of 1 or 2 years, right, you don't have as fast of an iteration loop as you would have with the non-mono edition of Godot. I think someone can confirm in the chat, perhaps, on Discord.
Okay.
And especially with GD extensions in Godot 4, like GD native right now, let's say once you set it up, it's fine. It's set up in your project and you're done. It's a little bit of a hassle to set up. You have to compile the GD native headers, and then you have to make your C++ project and compile it. And everyone who uses the project has to do that on their computer, more or less. GD extension is a bit easier to use. That's the main thing. But if you do the C++ module and you all use Windows, for example, the developer who does the C++ can do that, compile the engine, send the binaries to everyone, and everyone just launches that version of Godot, and the code is included in Godot. So I think that is good for development as well.
Okay. And a little a little non-technical question for once. Someone asks, how do you keep staying motivated? Because they have trouble, like making a game, and like, of course, like avoid it by procrastinating doing something else. So what is your like secret to keep going and keep going on and on?
The secret is there's no secret. Like there's only a lot of work on yourself. I think for me that's how it was. So what can I say? Like the things that work for people differ. The general thing for motivation is you need a mix of balance in your life. If you are the kind of person who procrastinates, or you don't manage to do the game, or you get bored very easily, you get distracted very easily, there's balance in your life. The physiology, the body has a strong influence, right? So if you eat very poorly, you drink too much coffee, you take drugs, um, you have lots of distractions in your environment. Like I would put, it's very general, right? I can't be too specific about it, but I mean, if you have something that makes you very unhealthy physically, then you can't expect to be very healthy on the mind, because the two work with one another. You eat too much, you get tired, you get easily distracted, irritated, and those kinds of things. Like you've probably felt that before. So there's that, right? Uh, and then on the other side, uh, procrastination, and like there are lots of small things you need to do to get into procrastination is a habit, and it's a mechanism the let's say the mind has um, to avoid suffering, if you want, and to favor short-term rewards, like you watch something or you do something and you have a little bit of let's say dopamine, I don't know,
Yeah.
versus things that are more long-term. And so how you counter that is by slowly forming, because it takes time, better habits, work habits, and those kinds of things. So in short, you need to do things like remove all distractions. You remove anything that has notifications. You put yourself in do not disturb mode everywhere. You deactivate notifications wherever you can. You uninstall the applications that distract you. I mean, those are my recommendations, right? It's a bit extreme, but
Uninstall Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
absolutely,
Kill them.
absolutely. If you don't use that, yeah, if you don't use them for work, I would recommend removing all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Even removing the email client or making it not so accessible. All the
Mm.
vibrations, the sound on your phone. My phone is here, uh, but it's always in basically do not disturb mode. I can see if someone calls me, that can be important, but I won't be distracted by the sound or those kinds of things. Um, in your environment, like declutter the place you live, don't have too many things catching your attention, sell your gaming consoles, all those kinds of things, right? um, if you want the ability to focus on one thing, even if it's a bit boring at first, is something you have to work on. So I don't know, reading books, for example, if you also struggle to read long books for long stretches of time, it's a sign that there's something general in your life and it's not specific to game development, right? So that's why I give all those things, like all the things that beep at you and try to grab your attention all the time, affect your brain, affect you, and contribute to that habit of something pops and your attention is going to diverge in that direction, and then you've lost focus and you're going to lose productivity doing that. And a very important thing, I think, because lots of people multitask and they think they are good at multitasking. That's been studied. And there's also the studies in neuroscience that show that when you do two things at the same time, not only does your, let's say, mind has to be split like your cognitive abilities, but actually there's some cognition that is used to coordinate the two activities, right? So not only, let's say, you have two activities and one takes 60% of your brain power and one 40%. Well, it's actually not that both take less, and part, like maybe 20%, is used just to coordinate between the two. Well, if you focus on one thing, let's say you can get 100% of your abilities on it, allowing you to learn faster, memorize faster, work more productively, etc. Which is why I recommend removing lots of things. And the final thing I would say, for me, I say all that because I've been a big procrastinator. So I didn't mention sports, but exercising regularly also helps, again, for the physiology that is foundational in those situations. Um, but then for me, a big thing has just been the practice over time, right? It's not something you do overnight. So you remove some distractions and then you get distracted by something else. And then you write down regularly. So I'm distracted by that and I'm going to try removing that. And little by little, you start to get into better work patterns, right? You start to work at the same time every day. You eat more healthy. You try to lots of things, and slowly, I went from procrastinating a lot and being long hours in front of the computer, but always switching between things, so I wasn't very productive. To these days, I'm able to close everything and just work for hours at a time on one thing, and then you achieve a lot more than other people. And you also learn to do making a video is not necessarily the most fun, right? Or sometimes like parts of the work is boring, and then you also learn to work through those things through practice, right? By doing boring things, for example, um, long stroll outside without the phone, like with just you and your mind. You start doing 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, walking for hours in the mountains. That can be one thing. And then you learn to be fine without all the stimuli that we have in our lives. I don't know if that helps because those kinds of things I think are very contextual. Like you have to see in your life what, uh, like take some pen and paper and keep it next to you all the time and write down what you feel and what distracted you when that happens and what you are thinking and those kinds of things. Like do a lot of reflective work on your life and to see in your life what are the things that you need to remove, where you need to declutter, what's working, what's not working also.
Okay,
Like you have
that's
to know yourself basically.
really good advice. Yeah, I think like this problem, like people say, oh, I have ADHD, but I think,
A lot, yeah.
yeah, like this is quite common, like ADHD, like it's quite common. So it's, if someone says this, they're in the general region. So, I mean, with so many attention grabbers these days, and not only this, but they also like study, like Facebook studies psychology like massively, like they use every trick possible to keep you engaged, like they make you, how is it called, echo chamber. So they give you more of the same stuff that you like in order to, for you to just like stay there as long as possible. So yeah, they kind of like, yeah,
I
work against you.
actually, I'm very interested in all the studies in psychology and these days neuroscience. Um, and regarding ADHD, I've read a couple of papers, so just the abstract, so I can't tell you if this is correct, but various studies that showed that basically it was due to the environment and various things. And I've seen one that tested the food in different schools, and that between very industrial, heavily processed food and very fresh produce, that this had a big impact on the ADHD actually, and that people had a lot easier time to focus with a much healthier diet. And especially the processed food and all the chemicals they put in it, and the sugar and those kinds of things it contains, affected people's ability to focus a lot. And another one I remember was just, that children who got tablets or phones very early on, and so they have all the notifications and all, were much more likely to develop ADHD. But that I can't say for sure because those are just a couple of things I read to check. But I do feel that these days, and especially I see people from North America say a lot that they have ADHD and those kinds of things, and that it seems to have greatly increased over the decades. And it's just a correlation. It's not necessarily a causation, but the stimuli we have in our lives and the food and those kinds of things has gotten, to me, I would say, worse, like much more intense. There are, as you say, too many things really trying hard to grab your attention and keep you engaged. And they use they basically use all the science they can put their hands on to keep you there and to get money from you and to get your attention, which is what they make money with and those kinds of things. So you have to be very careful in this day and age to counteract that. Initially, the notification systems and all that were good, but you can see how on phones like Android, for example, you can deactivate, you can control everything, right? But by default, it's not helping you very much to have a healthy life, right? By default, you will very easily get notifications from apps, very easily get distraction from all around, and they suggest you lots of apps, and also it's you can have control, but you have to work hard to get the control back, right?
Yeah, it's a
And
lot
that
of
thing is
people
very
don't.
important for me because one thing, when you procrastinate a lot, for example, you really don't feel in control of your life, and you start feeling bad, right? You have very negative emotions. You get to the point where you play too much or you get distracted too much, and you play feeling bad about playing, or you scroll Facebook feeling bad about it. I've had that experience a lot, and I've had it myself. And so all the things I say, decluttering a healthy life and those kinds of things, it also helps you get the hold back of your life and achieve things, and you feel much more satisfied in the long term, right? I also went from being very unhappy with my life to being much happier by doing all the things that I talked about over the years. It was like
Nice,
much,
nice,
much better.
nice. So everyone listening right now, yeah, I mean, like the attention grabbers, just remove them. They are pain. But yeah, a healthy diet and some exercise are also really good for health. Now I feel bad when I have a day where I'm not going outside just a little. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just like I just need to go outside, and I'm not doing like heavy sports. I'm just like walking for long distances, and even walking is good if you do it constantly. But
Mm.
yeah, if
Yeah.
not, yeah, just like couch potato style, yeah, it's definitely not doing
Yeah.
any
Someone
favors.
says the putting the phone in plane mode or the computer, I think is very good. You just cut all the internet
Yeah.
when working. Um, and yeah, and the last thing I wanted to mention is like all the things that feel boring as well, like very boring. Basically, when you have those experiences and it's boring at first, then you learn to appreciate them. So if you're used to be stimulated all the time, and then like for example, like you say, you go out and walk and just have a stroll and you start to look around, and at first it's like it's super boring for people who are constantly on their phones or something like that. But if you make the effort to put down the phone and all, after a week, after a couple of weeks, then you change your experience completely, right? And I've been living in Japan for over 1 year, and there are lots of these things that are extremely slow, right? There are, especially you go to festivals like the traditional dances and those kinds of things. It's extremely slow and stretched, and you learn to appreciate those things. And years ago, it would have been just, oh my god, this is horribly boring. Like back when I played games a lot, and you have lots of numbers on the screen, and I played MMORPGs, and you get super stimulated, like there are things happening all the time, and you go do those things, and there are things like experiences in Japan that they have built into the culture. You go drink tea in a tea house. It's like very slow. They will prepare the tea in front of you and put it down, and you drink it very slowly, just looking at the garden, not saying anything. And you learn to really enjoy those things, and you feel very good after doing them, actually.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I really like it. I always think myself like going like somewhere like a beautiful view and like drinking a coffee or tea and just like
Yeah.
enjoying the view. I feel like it's nice. But yeah, let's go over to the final ones. So someone says, I just wanted to say I appreciate your channel. It helped me a lot.
Thanks.
So yeah, also in the chat here, we got similar comments. So you help a lot of people, and that's really great. If you would change anything about the way people learn online, what would it be?
Excuse me, can you ask
If
the question again?
if you could change anything about the way people learn online, like right now we have like courses and webinars and I don't know what else we have. Maybe VR, but what would you change?
Um, let's say we get to choose, like we have an infinite budget, and um, so the first thing is you have to do some things in a way that people want to engage with them online, so that you couldn't change, right? So I would say uh, if we could change something, is first the presentation, make it more in a way just like you make those clickbait titles on YouTube, like make the education fast, so that people want to check it, because some very good and very useful education online is made by people who don't do those things and don't want to do those things at all, so very few persons check them out. Then if you want, there's a lot of the learning that depends on the student, let's say, that you don't have control over. So that's difficult. But I think with infinite budgets, what you can do is a very interactive experience. Like use everything we know from video games, and don't do gamification, but do something that's very much focused on the intrinsic value that people find in learning. So you don't do necessarily experience points and those kinds of things, but I'm thinking more. They do have a bit of that, but experiences like you find on Duolingo or those kinds of apps where they care very much about giving you a good flow and breaking down things for you to learn. You leave the experience and the virtual currency that are basically useless in the app. You leave them aside, and you just make a very good flow for people to learn. They need to understand exactly what they are learning. You need to break down the learning into small chunks that respect people's working memory, which is the first, let's say, kind of memory in which you're going to receive the information and you can process very little of that at a time. And you try to basically, if I had to summarize it, I would like us to collectively to do a lot more data-driven learning and design that is asking people and at the same time measuring things like how they work for people. Normally, if you do an educational game, that's what you should be doing. You should be putting very measurable goals that you have for the project and assessing what works and what doesn't. So using a more scientific method in a sense, or at least trying to make things as best as possible for people by measuring it, not with, how can I say, not by assuming things. And that's what we try to do with our limited means. But I do want to get more and more towards that, because people and teachers, fellow teachers, can have very strong ideas about what is the right way to learn. Just like people have ideas about what is the right way to code, and And well, this works surprisingly differently than you would assume at first. And so we want to leave all our assumptions and use metrics, for example, and ask people to see what actually works for them. Because the goal ultimately is for them to learn as efficiently and as well as possible, like to retain all the information. So there are things we know. You need repetition. You need the repetition to be spaced when learning. You need to see only one to one concept at a time, basically, and those concepts break down in multiple pieces of information. So you need to break down the learning like that if you want to make it easy to learn for a large audience, right? Um, and you need people to understand what they are learning, and you need to help them with that. So maybe my teammate this morning was talking about PigDev. Some people will know him probably. Was like it would be nice if we could do a skill tree kind of thing for the app. So uh, I, you see what concepts and things you learned and unlock them. So this is all the things you are learning. You can see them, and Duolingo does that. It's a big tree, and you go pick the lessons, like the nodes you want to learn, and it's broken down into multiple lessons, in each of which you learn several words and a grammatical rule, for example. We can do the same for programming, where you have a skill tree, and it's like you learn this one and this one and this one. You learn things in the tree, and you reinforce this one. It's just for people to know exactly what do I need to learn and what did I learn. Like, I know I learned something, I can feel it, but then you can reinforce that by saying, look, this is what you learned. We can do all those things with interactive apps.
Like an
And this
RPG.
is where I'd like to get. Yeah, but again, the idea is not to do the experience points and levels and gears and collectibles and those kinds of things. I'm not too fond of those. Those are extrinsic rewards. They are not as strong as intrinsic value when it comes to learning. Because I'm trying to look at papers on those things and the science behind it little by little, like to learn those things to design better learning. And another teammate is into that, and we try to look at things. And there are lots of things that we don't know exactly or we have to try. But one thing that scientists know between psychology and neuroscience is that with the memory, the deeper you can get the information and the processing of the information when people are learning, the more efficiently they can learn. So by connecting it to things they value deeply, and goals they want to reach, and concepts that they know, you can get them to retain the information very quickly instead of teaching things by heart on a surface level. Like, learn this, that's it. But if it's like, we're going to see this, this is how it's useful, this is the problem it solves, this is why you care about it, right? And here's how it relates to the previous thing that you learned, or the things you know, or the real world. And you put all those connections at the same time. It's much easier for people to remember those things. And so you want to do that. And this is, by the way, difficult to measure. And right, it's not easy at all. But scientists, it seems, know that this is the most effective way to retain information. So when people think they are visual learners or those kinds of things, it's probably because they have had experiences in which things were very well designed and very well connected, and they attributed it to the visuals or to listening or to writing. But actually, it's that was a connection with things they knew, and it was well presented, and it was clear what was the reason for them to learn that. For example, they know that as well, combining multiple sources, auditory with the visuals, with the reading, with the practicing, and when you combine those things, it helps to reinforce the learning as well. Again, a very long answer, but what I mean by that is I wanted to be more based on looking at the science and the people actually. And as a teacher, you leave all your assumptions aside, and you look at what works for the people. because again, ultimately the goal is to give them the best learning experience possible and to empower them to do things. And we spend a lot of time making those courses and resources, so we also want to design them to be the best possible for those persons. And sometimes it's really bothersome to make, like some things are, for example, with the app we're making, or there's a lot of work that goes into it. But if you don't say it to people and then they see the thing that's very simple to use in the end, we're going to try to get there. And the lesson's very short, they are going to be like, oh, this is super, like this is crap, right? This was super easy to make, probably because the lesson is short. No, but to make something short and that's very good for you, it actually takes more time, right? An experience. Sometimes it's not as rewarding when you try to do those things, because people think that because it is simpler for them, it is just way less work and simpler for you to make, right? And well, often it's the opposite. It's like writing very short code that doesn't compromise on performance, and reading and those kinds of things. It takes lots of experience and, you know, all those things, and lots of work. But people think of it, oh, this is very basic, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, like I've heard stories of like programmers being judged on how many lines of code they write instead of like how efficient they write it. Or even some games that I did, like even though they were like not really great, people say, I could have made this in 20 minutes. And it's funny because even if it's a bad game, like it took a long time to do that. So
it's a natural bias. I don't remember the name of this one, but this is very common. It's like when you say something that seems obvious, but other people hadn't thought of, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I knew that," and they have the feeling that they already knew all the things. And so with this bias is, for example, there is. It's, of course, in 20 minutes is a big exaggeration, but it is certain that when you see the finished game where the person has iterated and all, and it's like, I'm going to copy the finished thing, it's going to be much faster than you designing the thing and iterating, and that's what takes time. And so if they are to design a new game, it's going to take them a lot of time to come up with the ideas, to test the mechanics, to change the things, and until they get to the final product. And when they see that, it's like, basically they simplify, and all the work you did was just coding that finished product, like without changing anything, which is not at all how games are made. And so this is a strong bias. Yeah.
And also I remember like having like homeworks in university, like and somehow losing them, and then like recreating that work in way less time than before, because everything was here actually. So so yeah, even yourself, like if you apply it to yourself, like if you went for something, if you thought of everything, and now you know all the like the cases, like the all the details, you just put them, and you know, oh, I have to do this and this and this, and then you do that directly without making any mistakes, and boom, you have it in like a fraction of the initial time you spend on making it. So that's called experience.
Yeah, but you also have the things of, you know, when people, the less people know as well, the more they can have these biases and the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they think they are experts. And I saw that quite a few times on videos. It's like, you say that education costs a lot, like takes time to do well, or making game or whatever. They come and they say, I'll take the videos because it's very clear. They look at an 8-minute video and they are like, this is very quick to make. I mean, it's just 8 minutes. So maybe it takes 15 minutes to make. Like you were recording and doing the thing, and they have absolutely no idea of the work that goes behind it, like even just learning the features and then writing down what you're going to teach and ordering the things and those kinds of. And maybe the video in question took 10 hours, right, of practicing and preparing, even a screencast, because it's easy to see a screencast because you just record the screen while talking, but they don't even imagine that maybe it takes 10 times 10 recordings to get the final recording. Example, I made the theme editor video during the Kickstarter campaign. It took me 1 hour to make that 7-minute video because I re-recorded it 7 or 8 times. I was like, no, the order of the information is not right. Stop, re-record, those kinds of things. Because you need that practice to then get to the final flow, which is not perfect, but to teach the right information in the right order, right? And try to do that to get to the final product. And yeah.
I think we're done with the questions. Let's take the last one, and the last one is: should I learn GDScript and C++ at the same time?
Nope, clearly not. Learn GDScript, practice with it, and C++, you can do it later. So I picked up C++ recently, and I was like, well, with the modern features and those kinds of things, it's definitely not as complicated as it used to be, but still, it's a massive language, a very old one. It has design quirks. It has a massive amount of features. So just like I was talking about C# earlier, C++ is even more complicated than C# because it's a very complicated language these days, right? And you can learn, what you can do is learn a subset of C++ that is modern and that makes things a lot easier than the old one. The problem with C++ is, and why I've often recommended Python, for example, to learn, is the resources. The people who make courses and books for C++ often are people coming from computer science, and it can be very tough. The way of teaching can be very difficult to understand if you don't have quite a lot of programming experience already. And I haven't found too many resources that were very accessible for C++, even though they totally could. But with Python, there are lots of persons who use Python to teach to kids. So even when then they teach to adults, they make the learning resources very accessible, right? So you have some very good resources. But C++ it's not like that. Even I think the creator of the language, the I forgot the name. His books, Bjorn's book, is good, but still it is clearly from someone who has a background in math and systems programming. And so some things he presents are very much like from the mind of someone who does a lot of math. So that can be a bit difficult to get into if you didn't go to university, you didn't do university level math. I didn't, by the way. I learned math afterwards, right? What I know these days, but it's a very scientific, academic way of writing at times. There you go.
Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah, no, I learned C++ in the past, and learning higher and higher level languages like C# and then Python and GDScript, I wouldn't want to go back to C++ if I could do all the stuff like at the higher level, just because it's much more easier and you're prone to like less mistakes and you work faster. Totally worth it. But until you get the performance.
I would like the thing with those languages. I think there's a big thing with people being in computer science and math and those things. They tend to make things complicated. I'm looking at the recent alternatives to C++, and I'm learning, like looking at some of these languages like Zig, Odin, Nim, and they are much simpler without necessarily compromising on performance or the VEV language. And I think it's a pity because technically it seems we can absolutely get a language that is fast like C++. That's much simpler to use to write, and that compiles. So you need to compile to get those performance, like the C++ level of performance. But it seems we can get that extremely fast. Basically, you can get compilation that's so fast you don't care about it, right? Well, it's just as fast as opening Godot with GDScript. So I'm quite interested in those languages like Jai, Odin, those kinds of things, because I think we could get at least something that is closer to, like, that is not much harder to use than GDScript, but doesn't necessarily compromise on performance. And I've always found it weird that we needed those more terse and harder to use languages that lead to a lot more lines of code and less productivity, let's say, to do those things.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, but those are recent and not languages that are not widely used or not finished. Also, of course, we'll have to see how things go from there.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, Nathan, thank you very much for accepting this interview invitation.
Thank you
For
having me.
anyone that hasn't seen, we have the first one. It's unfortunately is not linked, but you'll find it on my channel. So also with Nathan. Yeah, and also thanks for sponsoring the event. Yeah, it's nice to see that that funds are starting to pile up. So yeah, I'll just wait a second. I'll do the outro and then I'll come back to you in a second. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned before, you'll find all the events in GoGodotJam.com/events. For supporting the event, there's also a page for that in the main website. Also, if you like this t-shirt, you can grab one for yourself in the merch section. I wait you on Discord, and I think the game jam starts in less than 9 days or 8 days, something like that. So be sure to stick around for that, and have a nice day. See you later. Bye.